So today we are going to talk about addiction, straight to it. What does it mean for you?
So I think addiction is anything that's like a behavior that someone repeats and they gain certain pleasure out of it. So it can be addiction to a substance, to a behavior, to anything, but it will give them certain pleasure and it will come from some circumstance or some memory or something. We'll discuss that. But I like the
Got
textbook definition better because it defines very well. So I have one here which says an addiction is a habitual behavior that is intended to numb suffering and pain. In simple words, if I just go and talk to a layman and say, "What's addiction?" This is the answer they might come.
Yeah.
And instantly pictures flash in your head of someone, snorting or probably inhaling something and enjoying some euphoric feeling out of it. And if you think about an addict, but addiction is not limited to drugs or substances. We know addiction also extends to behaviors, right? Patterns, behavioral patterns that one displays in their own life. Like certain people have some certain rules that they follow and then they obsess on them. Even that can be called addiction sometimes.
What I feel about addiction
Of
is
course.
very simply put, after all the contemplation, I feel it's escapism from reality. There is a painful reality in your head that are certain things are not working as you'd want them, and which is causing you discomfort. So you find these tools, maybe screen time, maybe alcohol, maybe smoking, maybe drugs, or maybe even relationships that you keep getting to escape the actual thing you want to deal with.
That's
You
correct.
have to deal with, I mean, but you don't want to deal with it.
But there's also another angle to it, and I'm sure you're very familiar with it. Say, certain times, personal behaviors and behavioral patterns they become very repetitive, and they turn into disorders.
Okay.
Disorders of health. This happens when that behavior or that substance or that activity, when it starts to corrode one's sense of normal life, how they normally do things. When their day-to-day tasks are affected by something like this, then I can really classify it as an addiction. So this is the angle we should discuss here, right?
Yeah.
How do we see these addictions in astrology and what are the combinations, right? So I will show you a chart, but there are a few combinations we can directly get to, like we've learned in our studies. What would you say is a planet that would indicate addictions? One planet or two planets, whatever you think.
Rahu.
Okay, and
Venus with moon usually in certain placements will bring addiction to pleasure and luxuries and women and stuff like that.
but you
Um,
nailed it when you said Venus. Venus is the primary planet, and then would be Moon or Ra.
hmm,
Moon is more influential because the mind, the
mind.
behavior, exactly how one reacts and how one feels is related to the moon. And pleasures, like you said, anything that pleasures your senses is Venus. Attractive, आकर्षित करने वाली कोई चीज. This is Venus. Okay, and Rahu. Now you know what Sri Rahu does. Especially in astrology, we've studied how Rahu and Ketu both are related to behaviors of maybe illicit or taboo breaking behaviors from Rahu and detachment. I've often seen smoking be related to Ketu, and
Okay.
I have a wonderful chart to show you today. All right, but we'll first talk about these placements. And the number one thing that we study in astrology, especially with Brihat Parashara Shastra, if you study that system, if you look at houses, the sixth house can be seen to judge any addiction or illness or repetitive behavior one has. But not just the sixth house from the Lagna, but the sixth house from the moon as well. Right? Moon is your mental pattern, the mental patterns that you वृत्तियां क्या है आपके दिमाग में क्या चीजें आती है मन में क्या चीजें आती है you can see that from the moon, right? And you look at the sixth from the moon, and it becomes a very special placement with regards to these repetitive patterns or addictions that one might have. With different planets in sixth from moon, one can guess, any astrologer can guess that इस इंसान का this ये जो आदमी है ये इस चीज से addiction रखता है, इस चीज के पीछे भाग रहा है. And Venus, if you see it in the sixth house, and if you see the condition is not very good, is another placement I have come upon where person shows repetitive or addictive behaviors. Like I've seen someone drink a lot with Venus in the sixth house.
I've seen women buy a lot of shopping bags, like bags and shoes and everything, also as a shopping addiction.
Exactly. Now that can also be classified as Proper addiction, yes. Like some people, you see anything that is giving someone a rush. I can call that an addiction, but now we have to see if that particular addiction disrupts the pattern of one's day-to-day life. And then I will actually call it an addiction, if you can understand what I'm saying. Right? So
Again, because in the marriage and astrology video, we brought this up. 50 years back, also addiction as a topic existed because of the movies like Devdas and all, and today also they exist. What has
everything.
changed?
What has changed is the substances that people use and the things they are addicted to. They've grown. चीजें बढ़ गई हैं. Earlier, there was not a lot of stuff people had around to, get
Hook
diverted.
themselves.
Exactly. So they would not be addicted. They were behavioral patterns. Now I'll tell you that. That always existed. उसकी recognitions बाद में आई, right? Our ancestors, maybe they knew way back in the past that these things existed. Maybe they had solutions, and all of that got lost with time. And now in the modern world, we've studied them in a new way. So,
But I'll tell you one answer I have as well.
yes,
Food
please.
was not perceived as addiction 50 years back. Like you didn't have the pizzas and burgers with high sugar and everything.
We didn't have this. We didn't have
Yeah.
these foods back then.
Like the
Right? But now,
distractions have only increased, like from screen time, Netflix,
instant.
food, shopping, internet, everything's become like
There
a
is
tool
so
to
much
addict.
to turn you into an addict that one cannot simply control. सबको होता है. Everyone has it. Like even if we are into hardcore yogic practices and things like astrology, we will still use some part of some technology or something. There will be something we're addicted to astrology. Now this addiction does not really hamper with our life. It's become a profession for me, and that's why we keep practicing it. It's not bad. So I don't call it something like,
Yeah.
if you say addiction in a layman's term, I told you what people imagine in their head.
Yeah. So anything having negative effects on your body, mind, or relationships, I think should be termed as addiction. If your repeated patterns are causing that damage.
Exactly. Are you able to notice
Oh
straight away
yeah.
the placement of the moon? The moon goes into Libra.
And the sixth from moon is Saturn and Ketu
Okay.
in Pisces.
Exactly. Look at the 6th and 12th from moon is Rahu Ketu angle. 12th from moon is the imagination. Correct? And 6th from moon is the behavior. Correct?
Huh.
We see Shani and we see Ketu. Ketu, I told you, smoking.
Mm-hmm.
Shani means what? Karam, work. This guy works and smokes 24/7. Person is addicted to smoking. And straight away, one can see, right? 6th from moon. And you can guess another thing about how this guy works while he smokes. With the sign of Pisces, he's always isolated, always by
Must
himself.
must be like a engineer, somebody locked in his room coding
Exactly. He's a
12
techie.
hours.
Guy's a techie. But he locks himself up in his room
Mm.
and he smokes the entire day at random intervals. Now, one can say it might disrupt his way of or his work, but his results are quite good. Nonetheless, this is an addiction. You must also notice the 12th from moon.
In Virgo.
The mind is the moon, right? So the imagination, 12th from the moon. And now you have Rahu over there, always looking for Rahu in the Rashi of Virgo. That also in itself is a combination for an addiction. We know Virgo is the Rashi of troubles, issues, problems, right? And Rahu, as you pointed out before, is the planet of obsessions.
I have also one more point to add to just check if I'm correct. Virgo also splits your mind into two things. So that's why he's able to code and be in the other
It
world at
really
the same time.
segregates things in your mind. That's why you see coders will have Mercury Rahu or Rahu and Mercury Rashis, that kind of combinations. And they write different languages. They're really able to understand the different segments and sections of it. So Rahu and Virgo, especially, this guy is a coder. Yes.
I was going to say because Virgo is analytics, Rahu is tech. So again, got
He's
it.
a tech. Exactly. He works with.
And third house is your effort,
coding
self-effort. Self-effort.
Exactly. Self-effort. Now that's another wonderful thing you pointed out. All of this guy's knowledge is self-taught. You know how in coding there are boys who sitting in their rooms and they can write amazing code. Very familiar with the tech parts, but what little I know.
So I just want to dig one step deeper and ask you, Rahu being in Hasta or Ketu being in Revati, does the nakshatra also signify anything at all in this, with regards to?
That is a deeper layer. we get to nakshatras. Primarily, on a primary level, these can be pointed out by planets, right?
Okay.
Another thing you can notice in this chart, you see Venus and Rahu at a 5-9 angle,
They're in a trine.
right? Venus sits in the Rashi of Taurus, which is eventually where he will consume. Again, this points to addictive behaviors, the same planets in a connection. So we can clearly say that this guy has some particular addiction,
Hmm.
right? Now he can remediate on it. We can also ascertain why he has this addiction. Remember, this is a behavioral pattern of the mind, correct? The
Yeah, so
moon.
I was going to ask you, can you identify what would be the root cause of this behavior through the chart?
I can. It is particularly an emotional disturbance because I'm looking at the moon in the fourth house in the Rashi of Libra. It's a Vayu Rashi, right? Very airy emotions. Okay. Or there's an event in childhood. Okay. Perhaps linked to the father, sixth from moon in the ninth
I
house.
was going to say some disconnect with the father, detachment issues have caused him
There's
to
no
find that.
problem with the father. As of now, there's no issues. But when he was a child,
Because he also has sun with Mars, father again, and some conflict showing there
can
as
say
well.
that is, yeah, we can say that that causes this person to be uncomfortable or a bit moody, and they might turn to behavior like this.
Yeah.
And you were also right about another thing, which is alcohol, but not as much. I cannot call it an addiction in this person's life, but it's more of a preference because of Shani. Shani will prefer
Oh,
classic.
I said Shani also, but also Pisces is liquids,
Uh,
water.
but that
I
way
said,
we will see liquids more from Cancer or,
yeah, yeah. I'm just saying
is it
why I
consumption?
guessed was, sorry,
Yes.
go ahead.
Consumption from second house or maybe Taurus, something like that.
But like, because it was water sign is why I guessed maybe as a fitness for traditional alcohol,
It
like
will,
they
yes. Yeah, but the combination will affect.
got it.
Yes, and it being sixth from moon in a water sign, so on a much deeper level emotionally as well. इंसान के बिहेवियर में होता है उसको वो चीज पसंद आएगी उस चीज की हो जाएगा
Or
एंड
wait, what do you suggest? What could, if he ever wants to work on it, what could be his remedy?
now there are lots of remedies I give to people with addictions and I try to check the frequency of the addiction they have as in कितनी आदमी कितना डूब चुका है and I can tell you it's different with different types of things if someone's hooked to a substance then it's different when people are hooked to substances their body dehi sharir is weakened okay not just the mind but the body is brutally affected शरीर कमजोर हो जाएगा तो इंसान हिम्मत जोर नहीं लगा सकता. He does not have the strength, right? Strength is you don't just need it in mental terms but physically is very important when you're trying to beat a substance addiction. So first thing I recommend for people is hardcore exercise. People need to sweat every day. I'm trying to say that people they don't have to go and pull weights in a gym or go crazy, but according to their capacity at their own level they need to sweat
Got
every
it.
day.
Exercise.
You need to release that pressure from the body. And when the body is energized, you will be able to gain certain amount of control over it. शरीर काबू
Hmm.
में आ पाएगा, right? The second thing with addictions and when I try to remediate is what I see is people don't live a proper lifestyle. Okay? They're not sleeping and eating and even doing basic functions on time. That is definitely going to hamper.
Right.
Okay. So if you want to beat an addiction, you first need to empower the body, then you need to get routinized, you need to get disciplined. And that will require a lot of willpower. So we can take techniques from yoga, okay? Different techniques. And it can be a long process, it can be a short process, but we can help people achieve that strength and the mental ability to beat certain addictions.
Now saying he's pretty young also, so maybe there is going to come a point in his life during a Saturn
Most
return or
definitely.
something where he will when it's I took to yoga when my Saturn return happened and I was addicted to junk food before that and I automatically let it go. So sometimes of course immediate remedy is also important, but time also plays a role and maybe when he becomes 30 things will change. I see that some things will change for him eventually.
So as a remedy, for this person, for this chart, you can look at a very strong Mars looking at them. If he simply energizes his body,
Hmm.
gets out of the house, starts running, right? The things will be fine. Nothing's wrong. The moment the body is energized, जैसे ही शरीर को ताकत, this person will be feeling fine. As they will be required, they'll keep requiring that addiction.
And also, addiction is somewhere related to nervous energy ka outlet, right? And if you start exercising, you're already
Releasing a
channelizing
lot
that
of nervous
energy.
energy. Exactly. See, now you can look at this guy's imagination. He's always thinking, constantly thinking. That's a problem he has.
Hmm.
Good or bad, I'm not going to comment, but he's constantly thinking.
Yeah.
Right? And he does it at home. For moon in the fourth house, person likes to be in his comfort zone. So what they simply need to get out of it. The opposite end is Mars and Sun. This guy
Hmm.
has the ability, right? I always asked him as a kid, why did you never have these issues? Why was it that you were all right? Everything was fine. And he would never complain. He said, as a kid, and then I asked him astrologically, did you do anything physical? As a kid, did you learn anything physical? Did you run or play sports? Perhaps he said, I learned. He said, I'm a taekwondo black belt or something as a kid. And I never gave the final exam. And everything was fine. He says, it's correct. Everything was fine when you told me, as a kid, what you're telling me, everything was fine back then. Yes. I would feel okay all the damn time. You know, I'd be very energetic, is what he said. So that is
Hmm.
what is missing in this guy's life. He can replace the addiction simply with a new pattern in his life, addict himself to something good and new. Both they'll feel
That you see charts of someone's 50 and liver is collapsed now and they're still addicted to alcohol. You're like, how do I even help this person, right?
and
But
then
like
it's hard.
someone,
Right now,
yeah,
that pattern has disrupted their normal way of living. Their organs are ruined, damaged. Now they have to seek medical attention, and there is nothing
yeah,
we can do. Only a
yeah,
doctor or someone else who's qualified can,
yeah.
right? But with astrology, we can do one thing is we what kind of addiction. We can see with very clearly with sixth from moon how we can see with 12th from moon what the imagination of the person is and if he has those tendencies. And this is just with the moon. But then with the next chart that I'll show you in the other part is the chart of a person with multiple addictions. Now I'll show you very clearly with Venus. And what I've always seen is second from Venus. Because with Venus, we see what is the pleasure one gains, right? And I also feel planets around it will tell you what's the picture. Like with the moon, we saw conjunctions with the moon, right? Sixth from the moon. Similarly, we have Venus, if it's in Virgo or in the
Hmm.
sixth house. I sometimes look at the second from Venus or a planet conjunct Venus, especially Rahu or Ketu, whenever cases of Venus turn up. Like we all know, Venus Rahu is again a famous conjunction for addictions or sense pleasure.
Right.
Such a person will have that fun, right? There's very famous charts, if you can see with Venus Rahu combination, Jordan Belfort, The Wolf of Wall Street. It's a very popular movie, right?
But then even Aishwarya Rai and Priyanka Chopra have a Venus
I
Rahu
said, right, not in all cases,
combination.
but especially in male charts, you will notice because for a female, Venus will enhance their beauty and attraction more. So you see, these women deal with luxury. Okay, they might be addicted to something like that. Big spenders, luxury brands. Okay, but with men, you will often see imbalances where they
Hmm.
pleasure-seeking behavior over and over again because Rahu will not be satisfied. So Jordan Belfort, perfect example. Wolf of Wall Street, a lot of money, Venus Rahu, fame, but we all saw the movie and you remember very clearly what was shown there was very much related to the reality that, but nonetheless, a very good example if you want to see.
And I was going to say the Playboy magazine's founder, Hugh Hefner,
Hugh
has
Hefner,
Venus moon in sixth house in Aquarius.
once again, desire.
Yeah, just
That also shows a lot of expense. Person spends a lot of money. Whoever this is
but
spends.
I'm trying to subtly tell you it's Venus moon, and Playboy magazine was known
Exactly.
for
Will be
women and
most
femininity
of the
and
time when you see these behaviors, especially Abhi Kali Yuga, right? So when you say addiction, you'll always notice it going off with these planets, Venus, Rahu, primarily
mm,
in such a way. Then you can add more planets for flavor. Let's say someone is an alcohol addict. So what type of liquor they drink can be seen by different planets. You can see beer from Rahu, right?
yeah,
You can see old school classical liquor with Saturn, right? Different activities, smoking with Ketu, weird substances with again with Rahu. So we'll get to that. In
yeah.
case you
That There is just one thing. So there's this famous Punjabi concert singer who's going through a whole rehab issue, and he's just had a very disruptive phase in his life because of this. He's cancelled off, and but there is nothing like I could point out in his chart that so his moon is in third house. So, yeah.
So we just discussed a while ago, right? This sign of for consumption, I believe, is the addiction in this chart. I will say straight off. Consumption is the problem. This person consumes or perhaps eats or drinks something wrong. And because you can look at Rahu in Taurus, right? And in one of those Dushtana house, 12th house, correct? And you can see it's in Rahu is sitting in a sign which is owned by Venus. And Venus is sitting in a sign co-ruled by Rahu. Aquarius and Taurus fall into the picture,
They're
right?
forming an exchange.
Exactly. There you go. That can point to you certain behavior. Now you also have to see the bhavas. Okay, 6th, 12th become particular. I always look at Taurus for consumption related behavior, what one consumes, and second out of the chart. Okay.
But what about Ketu Mars in Scorpio?
Now Ketu Mars in Scorpio can make this person very secretive. This person will be able to fight their illnesses, but yes, now you again have Ketu in the 6th house, and especially this is a Gemini ascendant. Okay, this person will have some sort of addiction to either spirituality or it's probably a smoke, but we cannot point that out clearly for now. I mean, I don't want to say, but I do see some consumption related behavior is what I can say.
Because you said Ketu is smoking, Mars is fighting it out in the 6th house.
Mm.
Daily basis, pe, I think the rehab is fighting out, right?
Is actually
Rehab
helping this person. Yes, it will actually help this person because you see Mars is stronger in this situation.
Yeah. Is there anything that shows rehab, like in a chart?
So
Like
I
that
do feel one thing is that this person's body might weaken because Mars is really afflicted. It's between Saturn and Ketu over here.
also his career got very affected by addiction as a, he's out of the
Believe
movies and
public image. This person's public image was very affected with this addiction.
yeah.
And if you want to go by Nadi, if Nadi says Jupiter is the native, look at 6th from Jupiter simply. See the issues that come to this native. It's Rahu in Taurus, 6th from Jupiter. But the nakshatra is also working behind the picture, but we'll get to that later. That's very deep.
I think he has Ardra nakshatra as his lagna.
This person's an entertainer. Someone who gets up on stage and talks or sings to a crowd of people, maybe singer. You mentioned singer.
Yeah, I said concert and like movies, and he's given popular hits after one
Very
after
popular
another.
question. Yes. It's 84 born. I cannot even take a guess.